Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to another Thursday Night Live. I'm going to take a little moment here to give people time to come in. Hopefully, we'll have a few people join us. Assalamu alaikum, Zahira. Very happy to see you here. So, we'll just take our time and see if I can invite a few friends. So invite a few friends in with us tonight, see what our friends are doing. Many of them are in other parts of the world, and I'm sure they are already asleep. So we'll just invite a few that may not be sleeping right now. If you join us and come into the room, just say assalamu alaikum, give a little wave, let me know that you're there. And if at any point you want to come on the live with me, hit that little icon at the bottom. Looks like a human with a little camera and an arrow. Just hit that if you want to come and join me and talk about something. Certainly welcome to join me. All right then. So, talking about vetting a husband. If you're on your way to Husbandville, this is the video for you. Or if you are thinking about someone you love or care for or give care for, who is on their way to a Husbandville, it may be also beneficial in that way. Or you just may want to compare notes with how you went about yours and what my opinion is about procuring a Muslim husband. Whatever your angle is, whatever your interest is in this video, I hope that everyone who joins us tonight will find some benefit. Let's get started. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I seek refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the evil of my own soul and the evil of my own deeds. And I am grateful for another opportunity to come before all of you for another Thursday Night Live. So as I said before, this is about vetting a husband, preparing to be in a Muslim marriage. So we talked last week about some of the things that brothers should look out for when taking a wife, whether it be, monogamy and polygyny. We kind of talked about both of those. So I intend to do the same for women tonight, talk about both. We'll first kind of talk about that monogamous aspect of it, and then we'll go back and mention some angles that are important from a polygyny standpoint, some questions that you wouldn't necessarily ask a brother who doesn't already have a family currently. So there is, some slight differences, but for the most part, the standards are pretty much the same, okay? So let's get started. As you know, I always start with the individual. Wa alaikum assalam, by the way, Zahira. And I always start with the individual. Anytime we're talking about our life and whether it is something that we are doing on our own or we are bringing someone else into our space, the responsibility always starts with the self. So the first thing that a Muslim woman needs to look at when she is thinking about getting into a marriage is herself. So the first question I would like to see sisters ask themselves is, am I fit to be a wife? And that is a question that very few people stop and even ask themselves, because we all assume that because we're females, we're fit to be wives, or because we're men, we're fit to be husbands. But depending on where you're at in your life, what you've gone through, what you might be processing at the time, you may not be at a point in your life where you are actually fit to be someone's spouse. And that can be very difficult to have enough objectivity to stand back and look at yourself and see if you're in a healthy place like that, where you, assalamu alaikum, brother Kirk. It may be difficult to stand back and look at yourself and analyze whether or not you are actually in a healthy place to become a spouse. But that is something that is very valuable to do, because if you are carrying around a lot of emotional baggage and a lot of scars, you are going to carry those scars, baggage, problems, traumas. You're carrying them into the relationship. So the first thing, it certainly starts with you. Ask yourself, am I fit right now to be someone's wife? If you went through a nasty divorce, or perhaps you were, widowed, whatever it is that you went through, if there was some pain, severe pain associated with that, that needs to be processed prior to getting, involved in another relationship. People say, I need some time off, time with myself. That's an excellent way to look at it. Spend some time with yourself. Process the pain and the difficulties, whatever it is that you went through, because like I said, you will carry them into the next relationship. So it's going to have an impact. Next, are you approaching marriage with the feeling that this is going to complete you, that something is missing in you, and that you need this other person in order to complete you? Assalamu alaikum, Sister Imelda. Glad you're here. Are you looking at marriage to fill a hole that you feel inside of you? Do you feel an emptiness, an incompleteness that you feel only marriage can satisfy? This is a red flag for a woman to notice about herself and think about before getting in a relationship. If you don't feel whole as a human being before you sit down at a table with a brother discussing marriage, my advice would be, don't sit at that table. Take some time, do some self-work, work on yourself. You need to feel as a whole person before you come and sit at the table with another individual. Because expecting another individual to complete you, that's an injustice to yourself and to the person whom you're sitting with. It's not fair to expect someone else to be, the other half of you. You have to be your complete and authentic and whole self. Just like that person has to be their complete and whole and authentic self. And then the two of you come together and celebrate one another's parties. That's how that works in a healthy manner. But when we expect other people to complete us, the unfortunate result of that is that somehow the person will always end up disappointing you. And that's not to say that the person will do something evil or wicked to you, but just by nature of being human beings. Human beings make mistakes. Human beings overlook things. Human beings end up, situations, things become out of their control. My first spouse returned to Allah. That was out of his control. He didn't wake up one day and say, today's the day, I'm going to leave. That was out of his control. So at some point, other, human beings are going to let us down. So we need to feel completely whole within ourselves before we get involved in relationships, so that the relationships can be something that we are coming together and sharing with another person, and we don't have unrealistic expectations for how that person is going to make us feel on a day-to-day basis. We can talk more about that later, more detail. Okay. A sister needs to ask, who am I? Do you know yourself? That's a very important part of this. Who am I? If you really have never asked yourself, who am I? What am I about? What do I believe my purpose here on earth is? If you haven't asked yourself these types of questions, I would encourage you, before you sit down and talk to someone about marriage, know the answer to these questions. I mean, after all, in a relationship, what good is it to know the person who you're marrying very well and you don't know yourself very well? It's really not possible. It's an old cliche. You hear it all the time. And they say, if you don't love yourself, then you can't love anybody else. And people say it so much, but the reality of it, no truer words were never spoken. If you don't truly love and embrace yourself, whatever love you think you have for someone else, it's really pointless. In order for your love that you have for me to be valuable, I need to see that you first love and respect yourself. And then I can have a true appreciation for whatever it is that you bring towards me and offer it to me as love. Okay, ask yourself, am I a giver? You know, I recently in the live I talked about the importance of realizing that relationships are built on service and sacrifice. So everybody in the relationship needs to be a giver. Unfortunately, this is not always the case. We have givers, takers, and matchers. Givers always want to see how they can improve a situation. Givers want to see what can they bring to the table. Givers want to see how can they help. Takers look at things in the complete opposite way. They want to know, if it's a business deal, how much money am I going to make in this? If it's a charitable event, how many people are going to know that I gave to the charity? How widely advertised is it going to be? If it's a relationship, they want to know, what am I going to gain by loving this person? Will it increase my status? Will it increase my wealth? Will it increase my popularity? That's a taker. Then you have matchers. Matchers believe that for everything they bring to a relationship, they want to take an even exchange for that thing. The problem with matchers is that is not realistic. Life is not that way. People are not always able to match whatever it is that you bring to the table. That's just part of the human condition. So if you are really stuck in the matcher mindset, matchers become angry when they feel that whatever they brought to the table hasn't been honored in an equal way. So really the only personality that works very well in love relationships is the giver. But both sides need to be givers. In that way, because both are willing to serve and sacrifice, everybody gets their needs met. So ask yourself, am I ready to be a giver? Am I ready to serve and sacrifice? Okay, now that's pretty much the questions about the sister, where she needs to ask herself about herself before she even looks at the brother. Before you even have a brother in mind, sisters, look at those things about yourself. Let's see what's next. Next on my list, I put, what are the qualities that I'm looking for in a brother? Whatever the qualities are that you think you are looking for in a brother, sisters should write that down. And I hope, no judgment here, but I hope that the qualities that you're looking for on the very bottom of the list is what he looks like. At the very top of the list, we want to deal with the brother's mind. How does this brother think? Is he a giver? Is he a taker? Look at his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's not a lot you can tell by being on the outside, but I will give you a few things that you can gauge it by. So let's start with this. Looking at his character. First thing, what is his attitude about your wali's involvement with this process? That is the first thing that you can look at to start analyzing. What is this brother's mindset? Is he always trying to exclude your wali at every point? Is he, talking negatively about your wali when your wali may not be listening? Pay attention to this brother's attitude about your wali's involvement, because that can signal some red flags that you might be concerned about. Okay. I hope that's clear without me going into too much detail. If anybody has a question about that, please don't hesitate to ask. Um, so, like I said, writing down the characteristics that you're looking for. Now, once you've met him and you've had a chance to sit with him, now ask yourself, what have you seen in this brother that's congruent with those things that you already wrote down, the things that you said that you're looking for? Okay, and with this one, we don't want to do any mental gymnastics because what we tend to do is if we see, oh, he's stable, he seems like he's a pretty good brother, but he really doesn't have the qualities, characteristics I was looking for. Now the intellect starts to work and meander to try to work him in to the ideal of what we were looking for. And there is where a lot of sisters go wrong. You have to really stick to your guns because the reason you are looking for certain characteristics is because you know what is going to make you comfortable and what you're going to work well with. So you need to stick to your guns in terms of what you're looking for. I would say the only thing that you can be really, really flexible about is a man's physical appearance. Because at the end of the day, good looks are not going to hang around anyway. Everybody's going to age. If you get old enough, you live long enough, everybody's going to lose their looks to some degree. And nobody's looks are guaranteed anyway. You can be struck with a terrible illness that will change your physical appearance at a moment's notice. Or you could go outside your home and something drastic could happen to you that would alter your physical appearance, permanently. So that's, like I said before, that's the bottom of the list, the least of your concern. We want to deal with the brother's character. Okay, so the next thing is, does he honor his debts and his obligations? And this is really very important because when we start talking about becoming family with individuals, it's not so much if a brother has money that concerns me, but what will concern me more is that brother's relationship to money. So as a sister vetting a husband or a brother who may have a daughter that, you're looking for a husband for your daughter, consider more the man's relationship to money more so than how much money he makes. Because the reality is, if the man is respectful with money, if he honors his debts and his obligations, and he's not a spendthrift, if he has any type of decent income at all, even if it's on the smaller side, in the long run, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to bless what he has because he handles it in an Islamic manner and with respect and honors, that which Allah has given him. A great scholar, Junaid from Baghdad, described gratefulness as not abusing a favor of Allah. And so that's what you really want to look at. You want to look and see, does a brother respect money and he avoids abusing the favors from Allah? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can put a lot of barakah in a situation like that. So he doesn't have to have all that, he doesn't have to have the 6-figure job and all that. If he has, just a decent income, but he knows he has a good relationship with money and he knows how to respect money and he knows how to spend money in ways that are pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is what I would really suggest sisters look at, his relationship to money. All right, next, is he financially able to have a spouse at all? Because you literally have brothers. I know it may sound like a funny story, kind of crazy, but back when I first was a brand new Muslim and I came to the community and, nobody knew me. Nobody had ever seen me before. And it was just like, wow, who's this lady? And it was a big story because, I was married to a Christian and we were both Christians and he didn't want to come to Islam and I did come to Islam. So I ended up a single woman in this community. And so different brothers, were coming at me trying to marry me. And one of the brothers, oh my God, he lived in a room in a house that he paid $149 a month to stay in. And he literally wanted to marry me. And I had a son already. So this man thought I was going to come and live with him in a rented room in a house, and I had a son. So do you see what I'm saying? It's completely, what a ridiculous notion. But brothers will approach you like this. They don't see anything wrong with it because people are coming from, different types of backgrounds and situations. And based on the background and the situation that he came from, he just, to him, he didn't see the problem with that. But of course, me, I had a big problem with that, especially because, I had a child, and so that wasn't going to work out for me at all. So you have to, look at the brother's situation. Like I said, doesn't have to be rich, but he should be able to keep you in a decent manner. And the sooner is that a brother will keep you at least at the status that you're already at, or raise your status. So do consider that when going into a marriage. All right. So now let's get to the part where we talk about investigations. So, in Islam, during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was surrounded by the Sahaba, and people were making hijrah, and a lot of the Muslims now had moved to Yathrib, or what we now call Medina, and so you had people coming in all the time, and you'd have new women in the community who were single, and new men in the community, and one of the sunnahs that they had was investigating people. So, they would go through a great deal of trouble to ask around and find out where people came from, who their family was, and get the story on, how they came to be connected to the Muslims. Because, of course, some people were infiltrators. And it's a very good sunnah, even to this day, for us to practice, investigate. There's nothing wrong. You're not being cruel or suspicious by investigating people. It's just simply a matter of protecting yourself. So when I say investigate, what I am meaning first and foremost is a sister should ask at least 3 people from the community that the man attends. If he doesn't already attend, your community especially, you should ask 3 people from that community who say that they know him, what their opinion is. And I would go as far as to ask the imam about a brother. Ask the imam, is he familiar with the brother? That's enough of a question right there. Are you familiar with him? If a brother tells you he's been going to the masjid for 10 years and the imam doesn't know who he is, run. Because that means he's familiar with that masjid. He's gone there on the Eid or whatever like that, but that brother's not attending the masjid because the imam doesn't know him. So that means he's not attending, regular salats. So that's just my personal opinion. I wouldn't accept that. Somebody said that they've been in the masjid that long and the imam doesn't know who he is. Now, let's say they've got 10,000 members. Okay, well, maybe I might be able to excuse that, but how many communities are that large? Not too many. So, especially if it's a reasonably small community, if he's been there for several years and the imam doesn't know him, that would be highly suspicious. All right. So you've asked 3 people from the community, asked the imam. Now do a background check. And I think this is one of the most valuable things that not just women can do. I didn't say this for the men last week, but there's nothing wrong with men doing this as well. If men want to run a background check on sisters, I think that's certainly a good thing to do. It doesn't cost a whole lot. $50 will give you a lot of good information. You can get a basic background check for $50 or $60 online on pretty much anybody in the United States. If you want to know whether or not a brother has served time, when you ask people who you interviewed who know him, You can ask him and then people who you've interviewed about states that he has lived in. And you can go online, and the information is free online for every DOC, Department of Corrections. You just go on to the Department of Corrections for that state, and you type in the person's name. Generally, what will happen is quite a few people under that name will come up, people who have been in custody in that state before who have that name. And because they have pictures to accompany those names, you see if that brother is any of those pictures. So, of course, if he has a Muslim name and then he has another name that his parents gave him when he was born that, may be a different name if he wasn't born into a Muslim family, you're going to need that information so that you could put this information in the Department of Corrections and look that person up. The important thing about that is it's not so much that a person did time, because we're not holding that against the person because they did time. But what you do need to know, if that person is an absconder from justice. So, in other words, they are looking for him. And he's got some, something that he needs to settle up with the Department of Corrections. I don't think you really want to go into a situation, into a marriage where a brother is in a position like that. Somebody who is looking to still serve some time, square up with the Department of Corrections in any type of way. We want to let him go ahead and clear that up. He's not really in a position to be taking a wife. He has some other things that he needs to tend to. So do a background check. Okay. This one. Is he willing to do premarital counseling? And I think the premarital counseling is just invaluable. And a lot of people say, I went to this boot camp or I took this class. Okay, that's fine. But there really is not anything that can replace you and that brother sitting together with someone who's qualified in real time, discussing the rights and responsibilities and the realities of marriage. It's a really good opportunity for you to get a little bit more of a glimpse into, the reality of his personality. And if you pick the right person to sit down with, you may learn a lot. And you may be really, really glad that you spent the time to do that. You want to ask yourself, does he come from a Muslim family or a non-Muslim family? And have some discussions about, his take on those things. If he came from a Muslim family, what type of Muslim family? And is that the type of Muslim family that he intends to have with his, wife that he is seeking, to marry? That can be a very beneficial conversation for you. If he grew up in a non-Muslim family, what is his relationship now with those non-Muslim family members? These are things that can be, very helpful for you to know. Something really important to know about brothers, and the flip side actually goes for women as well, but did this brother grow up with a strong father figure? Was his father in the home? Or did he have someone who served as the father figure? The stronger father figure a man had in his life, the more likely he's going to be a strong leader to his family. Now, it's not to say that brothers that didn't have a strong father growing up in the home cannot be strong leaders. That is not necessarily true. Some men had great substitutes. Some men had brothers they could look up to at the masjid, that were strong father figures. Just, get as much information as you can about that. Because just like women are deeply impacted when they, become daddyless daughters, men as well become deeply impacted by abandonment issues from not having, father figures in their life. So try to find out, what his situation was, and if he was abandoned or, has a daddy issue, so to speak, find out has he done anything about that, or is he willing to do anything about that? If he's been, severely impacted by that, and most people are, even if they're suppressing that, Most people are, suffering from that and need to process that. So see how open he might be to processing that. Okay. Next, I said, I have examined his relationship with the women in his life. What's his relationship with his mother like? If he has sisters, what's the relationship with his sisters like? Um, you can ask him, but he's going to say what sounds good. And he's going to present himself in the way he wants to be presented. That's what we all do in relationships. We all show our representatives first, and then later we introduce you to the person who we really want you to know. Some people are more that way than others. It depends on how authentic of a person you are. But kind of try to find out what his relationship with those people is. And if you meet them first, his mom and maybe some of his sisters, you can get a pretty good idea about how he might treat a wife. By the way, that he treats, the women who are already in his life. It's a pretty good gauge. Now, there's an exception to that. Let me see. The exception to that is we're getting ready to go over into the poly questions. It's cool to ask about the mom and the relationships, the daughters, the sisters and the relationships. That's fine. But off limits is if he is married and the wife and the relationship he has with her. Because you cannot gauge how he is going to be with you based on how he is with her. The main reason is because, number one, you can't be objective. You're not going to be able to look at their relationship and be objective. That's number one. Number two, he's not going to deal with two women in exactly the same way because these two women do have, two different personalities, which are going to trigger different parts of his personality. And then the other thing is, it's appropriate for you to ask about the mom and the sisters because these are things that you can relate to. You can have a mom just like he can. You can have a sister just like he can. If you get married down the line, he might have a problem with any of those people, and it would not be inappropriate for him to ask for your input or your support or your opinion. But when it comes to his wife, you can never have a wife, can you? No. And he shouldn't ever, he might, but he should not ever come to you and ask any advice on how to deal with his other wife from you. That would be inappropriate. That would be you getting out of your lane. That would be him sharing information with you that he shouldn't be sharing. One of the qualities, one of the great hallmarks of a good polygynous husband is keeping the secrets of the wives and not carrying their information back and forth from house to house. So that's a no-fly zone there. You could talk to him about the sisters and the mom, but when it comes to the wife, that's a very that's a unique kind of situation, and that's a no-fly zone. Now you can ask him in general what his general principles are in terms of leadership, and you should know how he sees himself as a leader, his standards for leadership. These are good questions. That there's no problem with any of that. And he should ask you about followership. How do you, what do you consider following a husband? What do you consider obedience to a husband? This is good information going back and forth that should be asked. But as far as if he has a current wife, that's a no-fly zone. Stay out of their relationship altogether. Okay. A red flag, the husband who bashes his current wife in any way at all. If he is talking about slothfulness and studying her dean, or maybe she doesn't clean the house quite properly, or she doesn't cook food regularly, whatever it is, that he's kind of, making offhanded remarks about, You don't have to like correct him or anything like that, but just take a mental note and just kind of say to yourself, okay, this is who he is. And realize that if you decide to marry this person, just like he is kicking her back out to you, someday he is going to be kicking your back out to somebody, whether it is wife number 3 or his friends at the office or whoever. But this is a person who doesn't guard their wife's character in front of other people. And another really important thing about that is, as coming in as a second wife, the reason that some men do this is to try to get women who are feeling hesitant about coming in as a second wife. They try to shore that up by indicating that there's some weakness with the first wife, so that the second wife will feel more encouraged to come into the polygynous situation. So don't be fooled by that. And don't be swayed by that. That's a common tactic that some brothers use. It gives help. They want that second wife to kind of have that rescue mentality. I'm coming in here to rescue this brother from this bad situation that he's got with this first wife. If it was so bad, sister, he would not be there. Brothers are only married to sisters who they want to be married to. You better believe it. Don't ever doubt it. If he didn't want her, he wouldn't keep her. So that's how that works. Okay. Next one. Let's see. Oh, this one. Okay. Doesn't make a move in regards to marrying you unless he runs everything by the first wife. Run. I've worked with a few families where this is the situation, and it's a lot to work through. Once a relationship has started out in this particular way, where there's a lot of involvement, from the first wife, or the first wife has suggested that, the brother marry the sister, I'm not saying that it can't be a successful marriage, but it adds so many challenges to a marriage that just don't need to be there. And one of the really unfortunate things is that it creates an unhealthy imbalance of power between the husband and his first wife in regards to his second marriage. So since she was so heavily involved in the very beginning, she feels like as things progress on, that she should always be kept abreast as to what's going on. She should be able to, ask questions that are actually inappropriate and overreaching, but she feels comfortable because you allowed her in that space early on in the beginning. So, inshallah, sisters, if you are looking at becoming a second wife in a situation with a brother and his first wife is heavily involved, you really might want to rethink that, because it may seem in the beginning that, oh, yes, this is wonderful, and this is so much better because, the sister is open and she wants me there. Trust me, that turns on a dime 9 times out of 10. It does not remain that way. And then the dynamics that set up later with that situation are very difficult to traverse. So try to avoid getting involved with a brother who really has his first wife heavily invested and involved in his marital process. Okay. Okay, number 3. Ask him, how does he intend to ensure he will spend plenty of adequate time with his children, if he currently already has children? This is a really important thing because a lot of people don't think about it until after they make a nikah. And then they realize, uh-oh, I didn't think about my kids, exactly how that's going to go. And then so now they're married and now they're trying to figure it out. So a really good sign, sisters, if you're looking for a brother and you do think you prefer polygyny, and you find a brother and he has kids, ask him that pretty early on. And a really, good gauge for you is, the brother who can answer that quickly, that shows that he's already given thought to that, which indicates to me that he's probably a great father. And if you're thinking of having, more children yourself, this could be, really very attractive to a sister who wants to have more children. The fact that you are possibly entering into a marriage with a man who's already a great father. So, inshallah. So, consider that. All right, this one. Beware of the guy who's doing poly because he needs poly to feed his ego. As unfortunate as it is to talk about, there are brothers out there who, are terribly traumatized or wounded from things that happened in their childhood. And because of those things that happened, or sometimes things that didn't happen, people become very empty and almost soulless. And unfortunately, men who end up with these very empty and childlike feelings and what we call inflated egos, they need a lot of attention. In fact, their need for attention is like a bottomless pit. It never gets full no matter what you try and do to fill it up. So you want to be really careful about getting involved with brothers like this. So a really good question to ask to see if you might be getting involved with a brother like this is, brother, have you ever been divorced before? And if so, how many times? And then listen to him. If he's been divorced several times, especially, listen to him describe the circumstances under which some of those divorces occurred. Really pay attention, because if he's talking about these marriages ending and everything's got to do with him pointing fingers at other people, that's a tremendous red flag for you. Because if the brother's been divorced 6 or 7 times, obviously the common thread in those divorces is the brother. So you want to pay really, really close attention to that. And you will find brothers, especially, in these poly situations, some of them, they've had the same first wife maybe for 10, 15, even 20 years. But they'll have 6, 7, 8, 9 marriages under their belt for slots, of second and third wives. So pay attention to that. Generally, those are brothers who have severe ego issues, and they're trying to patch up their broken, psyches and their broken inner children by, getting involved with multiple women and having multiple women, praise them and stroke their egos and, be willing to be their wives. But like I said, you can never fill up that bottomless pit. It's a bottomless pit. So take that for what it is. Okay. Last, the brother that doesn't have the means to meet hardly any of your needs and expects you to fully take care of yourself. It's true that, although women have certain rights and they can waive those rights, you really want to be very careful about waiving too many of your rights. Life turns on a dime. We never know, what's going to happen next. And while we're, making a decision and saying, oh, I don't need this and I don't need that, well, you don't know. Next year you might be, very ill and unable to work and care for yourself. So sisters need to be a little bit more realistic in terms of what they're willing to waive in terms of being married to a brother. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did say in the Quran that, the women, the good women, are devoutly obedient to the men. Why? Because the men spend out of their wealth, out of their means on the women. He raised the men a degree above the women. And so, we don't want to step on a brother's alpha position. We want him to be the king of his castle. And even if you're helping him provide, that's fine. That's fine. But it should be understood that if at any point you really got to a point where you could not provide for yourself, the brother should be able to, hold up your end and take care of you. Because in the long run, as a husband, that is, his responsibility. And it is the sister's right for that husband to pay for her lodging, her daily food, and 2 garments a year. And if the brother's incapable of doing that, it really does, go into a form of injustice. But once again, it is up to sisters. If they want to waive their rights, they are certainly, within their, Islamic right to do so. However, it may not be wisdom. So everything that is permissible is not necessarily wise. Well, I hope that some of those tips were helpful to some of you. And as usual, like I said, it always starts with self. Look at yourself and see, are you really ready to be anyone's wife? And then when you think you've met the right guy, do I really want to be this guy's wife? Investigate closely. When you're at sit downs, listen very closely to what's said and listen closely to what's not said. And if you're interviewing a brother for poly, remember, stay in your lane. Write your questions down. Be thoughtful, be respectful, be a listener, but stay in your lane. All right then, been on here a whole lot longer than I really want to, but I knew it would be a little bit longer talk because there's a lot to it when it comes to sisters, looking for husbands. And I appreciate everybody who joined tonight, and I appreciate all of your patience with me. All right, as usual, I do want to remind you all, your thoughts become your words, and your words become your actions, and your actions become your habits, and your habits become your values, and your values are who you are. All right, take care of each other, family. Peace.